Well, so much for that franchise. Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today, we're counting down our picks for the top 10 movie sequels that bombed at the box office. For this list, we'll be looking at various big screen sequels that are considered financial failures. We don't only mean those that failed to make a profit at the box office, but also those that technically made their money back but are still seen as major losses for the studio when compared to general expectations, production budgets, previous film successes, or other factors. We're not taking critical reception into account though. If it was a financial bomb, it'll be considered regardless of how good it was. Number 10, Charlie's Angels. While it's been called more of a continuation of the 70s TV series and the early 2000s movies, rather than a strict sequel, the 2019 film most certainly did not continue those earlier productions' box office success.
Welcome to the Townsend Agency. We exist because traditional law enforcement can't keep up.
Earning less than $52 million on a budget estimated between $48 and $55 million, the Elizabeth Banks-directed flick following a new generation of angels just couldn't garner much interest for its subject matter. The action comedy also received mixed reviews, with some critics even going so far as calling it formulaic.
The best part is them taking down international criminals. It's you guys.
While Kristen Stewart, Naomi Scott, and Ella Balinska are fun in the lead roles, they just couldn't live up to their predecessors, and the numbers showed it. Number 9, Evan Almighty. Movies don't get much more unnecessary or ridiculous than Evan Almighty. This sequel to Bruce Almighty follows Evan, the slimy news anchor from the original, who probably earned his own spin-off solely for that scene where Bruce forces him to babble his way through the news. In this film, Evan is forced into the role of Noah and builds a massive ark for an upcoming flood.
The flood is imminent! Board the ark! Save yourselves!
Yeah, they couldn't even think of an original story idea. And to make matters worse, the movie came with a staggering $175 million bill. Alas, the profits were washed away when the film ended up grossing only $173 million worldwide. Number 8, Shaft. Sure, the 2000 Shaft, which was simultaneously a remake of the 1971 film and a storyline sequel, topped the box office and was received positively by critics. But it doesn't mean that putting Samuel L. Jackson back into the role of the man related to the original John Shaft will also similarly succeed.
No, stay and have a couple more drinks with us.
No, you want to.
Maybe one more drink.
Okay.
Go! I said move!
That's obviously what the filmmakers behind the second remake sequel hoped for when they released 2019's Shaft, which followed Shaft's now grown son, JJ. Unfortunately, that's not what happened.
And to think this whole time I actually thought that you wanted to help me.
In fact, the action comedy made only a paltry $21 million at the box office, while its budget ranged between $30 and $35 million. The update to the Shaft series was more outdated than anything else. Number 7, Basic Instinct 2. Yes, this is a real movie, and yes, it was something that absolutely no one asked for.
You were having sex at 100 miles an hour.
110.
The original Basic Instinct is a fine movie, but its main claim to fame was the sensual performance of Sharon Stone. It was a film that teenagers covertly rented and hid from their parents. Now here's an unwanted sequel released 14 years later, and at a time when sexuality wasn't nearly as taboo and didn't guarantee big money. And big money it did not make.
He said you murdered a Johnny Bars and 2 detectives in San Francisco.
I was never even charged.
The movie opened to an abysmal $3 million and stayed in theaters for only 17 days before being pulled with a total domestic tally of $5.9 million. Number 6, Terminator Dark Fate. While retconning may allow for a clean slate, or at least for another chance to atone for past mistakes, it's not always going to help return an intellectual property to its former glory.
Why do you care what happens to her?
Because I was her.
While critics seem to agree that the 6th film was better than many installments before it, Dark Fate still did not blow them or audiences away. Acting as a direct sequel to the first 2 Terminator flicks, the sci-fi action movie didn't only rehash previous plot points, but also ended up becoming a box office bomb. When comparing its $185 to $196 million production budget to its box office earnings of $255 million, the film's break-even point has estimates pointing to a studio loss of up to $130 million.
I know now why you cry.
Number 5. Blues Brothers 2000. And you thought Caddyshack 2 was unnecessary. The Blues Brothers is a cult classic, released to critical acclaim and notable financial success in 1980.
They're sensational. You're going to call me and thank me. They're just wonderful. The Bluegrass Brothers.
Nearly 20 years later, an extraordinarily unneeded sequel was released with John Goodman trying to fill John Belushi's shoes. It went over about as well as you'd expect. While some people saw the movie as a passable tribute to the original, with a kick-ass soundtrack, others saw it as a woefully disappointing sequel that tarnished the original and insulted the memory of Belushi. The movie only grossed $14 million at the box office, about 12% of the original's $115 million gross. Number 4. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. Coming in just barely under a decade after the original Sin City, A Dame to Kill For captures the same visual magic as its predecessor, and retains much of its charming cast, including Bruce Willis and Mickey Rourke.
Where are we going, Johnny?
Everywhere.
There are even some exciting new additions, including Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Josh Brolin, and Ava Green. While the cast and style were certainly there, the relevance had long gone.
I thought there was another world out there. I thought I could be a part of it.
With an estimated budget of $65 million, the movie grossed a tragically horrendous $13 million at the domestic box office. It didn't fare much better overseas, accumulating a worldwide gross of only $39 million. Now that's a depressing tale worthy of Sin City. Number 3. Dark Phoenix. You'd think after 12 tries, they would have figured out the formula to box office success by now. Unfortunately, the directorial debut of Simon Kinberg, who wrote several of the previous film's screenplays, still did not get things right.
So what does that mean?
It means, we'll have to build a better machine.
At least when it comes to the numbers, it didn't, though critics' reviews of the movies were quite unfavorable as well. The sequel to 2016's X-Men Apocalypse sees the failure of a space mission and the X-Men having to take on the titular Phoenix.
Please, stop.
Not until I know you're gonna be okay.
Something's happening to me.
However, despite an ensemble cast, this conclusion to Fox's X-Men franchise would go on to become the series' lowest grossing film, disappointingly making only about $52 million more than its $200 million production budget. Number 2. The Chronicles of Riddick. We honestly have no idea what Universal was thinking here.
There's no simple answer.
Pitch Black was a fairly standard horror movie about characters escaping from monsters while a reluctant anti-hero protects them from the dangers. This anti-hero was such a popular character that they decided to give him his own story. Only they switched the genre from horror to big-budget science fiction and took the series and character in a more fanciful direction. It wasn't what fans of Pitch Black were hoping for.
Stay in the shadow of the mountain. Don't wait for me, run!
On a budget of about $105 million, the movie only grossed about $57 million in domestic markets and $115 million worldwide. And that wasn't what the studio was hoping for. Fair trade. Before we unveil our most horrendous number 1 pick, here are some honorable, or in this case dishonorable mentions.
Cynthia's been kidnapped. I need your help.
This could be great. I'll wait for you to get back in the game.
Yes, back in the game.
My friends call me Murphy. You call me RoboCop.
Interesting club. What would you call it? It's 12 gauge.
Not many ride the bus this far north. You're running away from something?
Why are you here?
When I intercepted their distress call, I knew they would come to exterminate you. I came to evacuate as many of you as possible.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Son of the Mask. Making a sequel to The Mask without Jim Carrey is one thing. Replacing him with Jamie Kennedy is another.
Excuse me. My bad.
Son of the Mask was far too wacky, which is saying something considering the frantic energy of the original. The humor was childish, and don't even get us started on that freaky CGI baby. It's baffling that this comedy was greenlit with a budget between $84 and $100 million. What isn't baffling, however, is that the film only earned $17 million at the domestic box office, and $57 million worldwide, seemingly proving that everyone thought this movie belonged at the bottom of a river, just like its titular mask. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.